How does one predict the apocalypse with a barometer? Not through psychic powers, not through prophetic visions, but through the most underappreciated force in the Immaterium. A weatherman who refuses to admit his instruments might be broken.
Subject designation: Virgil Thane, meteorologist 3rd class, Imperial Weather Service, Hive Primus Atmospheric Monitoring Station. 31 years of service, 11,326 forecasts issued. Accuracy rate, 64%. He was very proud of this number. The farmers were not. His psychological evaluation read, pathologically incapable of accepting error. Subject insists all failed predictions are due to localized microclimatic variations or equipment calibration delays. Recommend continued employment. No one else wants the job. His life was barometric pressure, precipitation models, and strongly worded complaints from agricultural overseer Hennis about another failed rain prediction. His equipment was imperial grade, calibrated once per decade, maintained never, and possessed of a machine spirit that was probably asleep. But Virgil trusted his instruments. More than that, he trusted his methodology. And his methodology had never, in 3 decades, encountered weather it couldn't classify. Storms were high pressure meeting low pressure. Rain was condensation reaching critical mass. Lightning was electrostatic discharge. Simple, predictable, measurable. Until week 17 of year 892 M41, when the readings started showing data that shouldn't exist. 0600 hours. Virgil arrives at station, makes recaf. It tastes like recycled promethium. He drinks it anyway. 0615, checks overnight data. Atmospheric pressure, normal. Humidity, acceptable. Wind patterns, standard. Ionospheric activity within parameters. 0630, issues morning forecast. Partly cloudy, 40% chance of precipitation, high of 23 degrees, suitable for planting season cycle crop pattern B. 0631, agricultural overseer Hennis voxes complaint about yesterday's forecast being wrong, again. 0635, Virgil files complaint response, localized microclimatic variation outside predictive parameters. This was his routine. This had always been his routine. He'd performed it through 3 food riots, 2 gene stealer uprisings, and 1 orc wa that had somehow gotten lost and ended up in the upper hive. Through it all, he'd issued his forecasts 4 times daily, without fail. The Administratum had once sent an efficiency expert to evaluate his station. The expert had recommended replacing him with an automated system. Virgil had presented a 1,000-page report on why human interpretation of data patterns was essential. The expert had fled after page 712. He'd been doing this job since he was 19. His predecessor had died at his desk mid-forecast. Virgil had finished the forecast before reporting the death. Priorities were priorities. Day 3 of week 17, 0615 hours. The barometric pressure reading was negative. Not low, negative, minus 47 millibars. Virgil tapped the gauge,
standard procedure for equipment malfunction. The needle didn't move. It read negative 47 millibars. He consulted the Imperial Weather Service Manual, Section 4, Anomalous Readings. Negative pressure indicates instrument failure. Recalibrate and retest. He recalibrated. The reading got worse, negative 83 millibars. He filed a maintenance request. Response time, 6 to 8 months. But here's what Virgil Thane understood that no one else in the hive did. He might not know what was causing it, but he knew what it meant. Something was creating a low-pressure system of unprecedented magnitude. And low pressure meant storms, big storms. So he did what he always did. He updated his forecast. Severe weather alert. Unprecedented atmospheric disturbance detected. Probability of hazardous conditions 73%. Recommend indoor activities. Monitor updates. He hit send. 14 people read it. 12 of them were automated agri-servitors. They didn't understand it either. But Virgil had done his job. He'd issued the warning. What he hadn't realized was that his instruments weren't broken. They were detecting something that had no business being in a weather report. A warp storm. A breach in reality itself. A cosmic horror that made hurricanes look like a light breeze. And he'd just classified it as severe weather. He had two options. Report the impossible readings and watch his career end in mandatory psychological evaluation, or continue doing his job, treat the impossible as simply improbable weather. He chose option 2, not from courage, but because he'd spent 31 years predicting weather and he wasn't about to let a little physical impossibility ruin his methodology. The readings got worse. Temperature fluctuating, 22 degrees to negative 40 to 90 in 10 minutes. Humidity 400%. Physically impossible. Wind speed variable from 8 cardinal directions simultaneously. Virgil stared at his instruments, then at his manual, then back at his instruments. Severe atmospheric instability detected, he announced to his empty station. Temperature swings of 60+ degrees expected. Recommend protective clothing and layers. His supervisor, Administrator Calex, voxed immediately. Thane, your instruments are clearly malfunctioning. I ran diagnostics 3 times. Instruments are within acceptable tolerance. They're reading 400% humidity. Yes, that suggests a significant moisture event, possibly fog-related. Fog doesn't exceed 100% humidity. Unusual fog might. Calex terminated the connection with what sounded like a scream of frustration. By midday, the unusual fog had arrived. Red mist rolled through lower hive, thick enough to leave condensation on windows that looked suspiciously like blood. Citizens reported hearing whispers in dead languages. 3 spontaneous fires broke out in prayer halls. The sacred candles had started burning backwards, flame going into the wick instead of away from it. Virgil updated his evening forecast. Dense fog conditions persisting. Visibility reduced. Isolated thermal anomalies reported. Fog appears reddish, possibly industrial pollutants. Not my department. The Planetary Defense Force sent a squad to investigate the thermal anomalies. They found reality flickering like a broken lumen strip. The sergeant reported walls becoming floors, gravity pointing sideways, and his weapon firing bullets that aged decades before hitting targets. Virgil classified this as localized atmospheric lens effect causing optical distortions. By evening, 3,000 people had evacuated Lower Havre, not because of Virgil's forecast, but because their pets had started speaking in dead languages. Virgil's end-of-day report noted forecast accuracy 68%, within acceptable parameters. He went home, updated his methodology notebook, added a new category, anomalous fog conditions, then went to bed at precisely 2100 hours, as always.
0600 hours, Virgil arrived to find his instrument screaming. Not metaphorically, literally. The barometer was emitting a high-pitched wail. The anemometer spun so fast it generated its own wind. The humidity gauge wept actual tears. He checked the manual. No section covered weeping instruments. He improvised. Ionospheric radiation, 10,000 times normal. Air pressure, -400 millibars. The Auspex was detecting patterns that weren't electromagnetic. The spectrum analyzer showed colors that didn't exist, ultraviolet and infrared. Virgil adjusted his spectacles and began typing. Severe storm warning. Dangerous atmospheric conditions developing. Ionospheric disturbance may affect communications. Outdoor activity not recommended. Structural integrity of older buildings questionable. Emergency supplies advised. The response was immediate. The Adeptus Arbites arrived within the hour. Citizen Thane, you're causing public panic. I'm reporting weather patterns. You're predicting apocalypse. I'm predicting severe weather. The apocalypse would require different forms. The Arbite stared at him. Different forms? Forms 99 Alpha through 99 Zeta for extinction-level events. This is only a 77 Beta, significant weather event. They left him alone after that. Even the Arbites knew better than to argue with an imperial bureaucrat about forms. By noon, the sky had turned crimson. Not red, crimson. The specific shade of blood mixed with regret. Gravity started fluctuating. Citizens reported falling upward for 3 seconds, then sideways for 2, then regular down, but twice as hard. A parade ground full of guardsmen attempted morning drills and ended up scattered across the ceiling. Every psyker in the hive started bleeding from their ears. The astropathic choir attempted to send a distress signal and instead transmitted 17 volumes of the Imperial Infantryman's uplifting primer, simultaneously backwards. Nobody understood it, but the psychic feedback induced the powerful sense of boredom and despair in 3 systems. An entire Hab district reported having the same nightmare simultaneously, something about taxes and tentacles. Virgil watched all this through his observation window and updated his instrument's readings. Barometric anomalies suggest pressure system from the southwest, moving at approximately 40 kilometers per hour. He paused, calculated. Estimated arrival of primary storm front 18 hours. His afternoon update was brief. Storm intensifying. Seek shelter. Avoid windows. Also, avoid looking directly at the sky. It appears it is looking back. 50,000 people evacuated.
The nobles complained about alarmist forecasts ruining trade. The farmers were still planting crops, though the seeds kept screaming. Agricultural overseer Hennis called to complain. Thane, you said 40% chance of rain yesterday. It rained fish inside upward. Unusual precipitation is still precipitation. Forecast was technically accurate.
The instruments had stopped showing numbers. They now displayed messages. The barometer read, "They'll Theans." The thermometer showed, "Yes." The wind gauge spelled out, "Screaming, approaching from southwest." The humidity gauge just displayed a picture of an eye. It blinked occasionally. Virgil consulted his manual one more time, found nothing about instruments developing sentience, decided to proceed with standard protocols anyway. Catastrophic weather event imminent. All residents advised to seek shelter in reinforced structures. 96% probability of severe property damage, possible casualties if warnings ignored. This is not a drill. He thought for a moment, then added, "Also, the instruments are behaving unusually. Maintenance has been requested." His supervisor burst through the door. "Thane, your equipment is possessed." "It's showing consistent patterns. It's writing messages." "Yes, the messages indicate a southwestern approach vector. Wind speed of, well, it says screaming, but I'm interpreting that as exceeding measurement capacity. So, very fast." "You can't report this as weather." Virgil adjusted his spectacles. "Administrator Calyx, I have been predicting weather for 31 years. I have never, not once, failed to issue a forecast. I'm not stopping now just because the barometer has developed opinions. The Mechanicus says it's showing massive warp signatures. The Mechanicus isn't trained in meteorology." Outside, reality had started to flicker more aggressively. Buildings appeared and disappeared. The dead walked through streets that existed yesterday but not today. A district that had been destroyed in an orc attempt 3 years ago manifested for 17 minutes, complete with confused residents who insisted it was still year 889. The Imperial Guard finally mobilized, not for the warp storm, they didn't believe in that yet, but for the riots they expected from the panic. Instead, they found orderly evacuations, citizens calmly moving to shelters in reinforced structures. 64% accuracy was enough when the alternative was being caught in unusual weather. By evening, 500,000 had evacuated. The cult of the Crimson Veil, who had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment, found their grand summoning ritual playing to an empty audience. Hard to spread terror when everyone's in basement shelters playing cards and complaining about Virgil Thane's forecasts. But Virgil wasn't predicting weather. He was predicting the breach of reality itself. And he was doing it with a barometer that wept, a wind gauge that screamed, and 31 years of stubborn refusal to admit his instruments might be wrong. The warp storm didn't care about his forecast. It didn't care about his 64% accuracy rate. It didn't care that he'd classified cosmic horror as atmospheric disturbance. But 47 million people did, because they understood storm warning. They understood seek shelter. They understood severe weather. They didn't understand warp storm, but they didn't need to. The instruments had progressed beyond messages. They were now having conversations. Barometer, it comes.
Thermometer, the Crimson Veil parts. Humidity gauge, 47 million souls. Wind gauge, blood, 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 blood. Rain gauge, high. I'm still measuring precipitation. 0 millimeters currently. Virgil noted that at least one instrument maintained professional standards. His morning forecast was delivered on all emergency channels. Emergency broadcast. Shelter in place. Category 7 atmospheric phenomenon approaching. All personnel to designated shelters. This is not a drill. He paused, checked his notes, added, Category 7 doesn't technically exist in our classification system. I've created it. It means very, very bad weather. The Mechanicus had finally decoded what the instruments were detecting. A massive warp storm, designation Crimson Veil, summoned by 3 centuries of ritual preparation. It would consume the hive, drag 47 million souls into the Immaterium, and birth a new daemon world. The Inquisition dispatched 3 full cells. The Imperial Navy moved a battle fleet into orbit. 7 regiments of guard took positions. The Adeptus Astartes were contacted. The Iron Hands chapter had a strike cruiser 2 systems away. None of them would arrive in time. But Virgil Thane's forecast arrived 3 days early. The cult of the Crimson Veil emerged from their hidden temples to find empty streets. Their grand revelation, their moment of supreme terror, played to no audience. The demon heralds manifested in empty plazas. The possessed cultists ranted to empty windows. Worse, the emergency shelters had been blessed by the Ecclesiarchia's standard procedure. 47 million souls huddled under consecrated roofs, surrounded by blessed rockcrete, listening to hymns on the Vox while playing cards and complaining about the weather. The warp storm arrived at exactly the time Virgil predicted. His accuracy rate increased to 65%. Reality tore open over Lower Hive. The Crimson Veil parted, revealing the impossible geometries of the warp. Demons poured through, bloodletters seeking skulls, plague-bearers spreading disease, demonettes offering temptations. They found empty streets, empty hab blocks, empty everything. A bloodletter kicked in a door, roaring for blood and skulls, and found itself facing 3,000 civilians in a basement shelter. They looked at it with a weary annoyance of commuters whose train was delayed. "Is the storm over yet?" someone asked. The demon screamed about blood and death. "So, no, still sheltering then. Close the door, you're letting the weather in." The demon tried to charge, bounced off the blessed threshold, tried again, bounced again. Eventually, it gave up and wandered away, confused and slightly hurt, emotionally more than physically. Virgil hadn't left his station in 5 days. He'd been sleeping in his chair, living on recaf and ration bars, continuously updating his forecasts. The instruments had evolved their conversation. Barometer, reality, 36% restored. Thermometer, daemon entities decreasing. Humidity gauge, the ritual fails. Wind gauge, whimper, winker, 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 whimper. Rain gauge, precipitation detected. 3 millimeters of what appears to be tears. Virgil typed his update. Storm intensity decreasing. Atmospheric pressure returning to normal parameters. Expect clearing by evening. Unusual precipitation reported. Salty water from no identifiable source. Possibly ocean atmospheric transport, though nearest ocean is 3,000 kilometers away. We'll investigate. The warp storm was collapsing. Not from the Emperor's intervention, not from the desperate last stand of heroes, but from simple energy depletion. Warp storms feed on emotion, specifically terror, panic, chaos. They do not feed on mild annoyance about weather delays. They cannot sustain themselves on complaints about forecast accuracy. They definitely can't process the emotional signature of 3 million people simultaneously playing cards and arguing about whose turn it is to deal. The cult of the Crimson Veil watched their 3-century plan collapse because a weatherman had told everyone to stay indoors. By hour 47 of the storm, Daemons were actually retreating back into the warp, not banished, bored. A keeper of secrets had tried to tempt a shelter full of citizens and received a 40-minute lecture on proper emergency preparedness procedures. It left halfway through, claiming it had somewhere else to be. At precisely 08:47 hours, day 5, the Crimson Veil dissipated. Virgil issued his final storm forecast. Storm has passed, conditions improving, partly cloudy by evening, resumed normal activities. Please note some unusual debris may be present. Recommend wearing closed-toe shoes. Unusual wildlife also reported. Do not feed or pet the unusual wildlife.
Imperial Inquisitor Gaius Rex arrived 6 days after the storm. His investigation was thorough, methodical, and increasingly confused. Meteorologist Thane, you predicted a warp storm. I predicted severe weather. My accuracy rate for this event was 71%. You saved 47 million people. I issued standard severe weather warnings per Imperial Weather Service Protocol 14. Your instruments were displaying messages from the warp. Equipment malfunction. I've filed a maintenance request. Response time 6 to 8 months. The Inquisitor stared at the man. Short, balding, spectacles held together with adhesive tape. The most powerful psychers in the Inquisition had gone mad trying to predict warp storms. This man had done it with a barometer that wept. How did you know it was coming from the southwest? The wind gauge. The wind gauge that was screaming blood repeatedly. Yes, but it was pointing southwest while screaming. Direction is direction. You're either the greatest psyker I've ever met, or the most oblivious man in the Immaterium. I'm a meteorologist. I predict weather. That's what I did. The Inquisitor's final report was filed under Inexplicable Victories, subsection Atmospheric. Official credit for saving High Primus went to the planetary governor, who had been off-world, the Imperial Guard, who arrived after it ended, the Space Marines, who were still in transit, and the Inquisition, who watched it happen in confused silence. Meteorologist 3rd Class Virgil Thane was mentioned in a footnote. Local weather station reported unusual readings. Equipment malfunction led to coincidental evacuation that may have reduced casualties. Virgil's response: they called my equipment malfunctioning insulting. My accuracy rate was 71%. That's 7 points above average. The cult of the Crimson Veil had spent 300 years preparing. 13 generations of cultists, thousands of rituals, millions of thrones worth of artifacts and preparations. They failed because of a weather forecast. The cult leader's final log was recovered later. Operation Crimson Veil failed. Cause of failure: population evacuated to weather shelters.
Contributing factor: local meteorologist issued severe weather warning 3 days before manifestation. Analysis: subject appeared to predict warp phenomenon using standard atmospheric monitoring equipment. Recommendation: future operations should monitor local weather services. Note: interrogated captured meteorologist about psychic abilities. Subject spent 4 hours explaining high and low pressure systems. 3 interrogators requested transfers. 1 entered voluntary stasis. Subject appears to be mundane, incomprehensibly mundane. The cult disbanded, not from being destroyed, but from sheer embarrassment. You can recover from being defeated by Space Marines. You can't recover from being defeated by a weather forecast. 3 cult members tried to restart operations a year later. They were reported to the authorities by neighbors who noticed them checking weather reports obsessively and muttering about barometric pressure. 2 weeks after the Crimson Veil event, Virgil Thane was back at his station. 06 o'clock, arrival. Recaf, still tasted like promethium. 06:15, check instruments. They'd been repaired by the Mechanicus. The repair consisted of replacing everything and performing 17 exorcisms. The new equipment gave normal readings. Virgil filed a complaint that the calibration was off by 0.3%. 06:30, issue forecast. Partly cloudy, 30% chance of precipitation, high of 22 degrees, suitable for crop pattern C. His supervisor had been promoted for exceptional crisis management. Virgil hadn't been promoted. Promotions meant less time with the instruments. His accuracy rate was back to 64%. Agricultural Overseer Hennis still called to complain. "Thane, you said 30% chance of rain. It didn't rain." 30% means 70% chance of no rain. Forecast was accurate. That's not how probability works. According to Imperial Statistical Manual, Section 9, Hennis hung up. Everything was normal, except his forecasts now had 3.7 million regular readers, people throughout the sector who checked Hive Primus weather every morning, not their local weather, Virgil's weather. They read his dry technical predictions with religious devotion. Morning conditions: ground frost likely. Afternoon, warming trend. Evening, cooling trend. This is how weather works. They found comfort in his mundane certainty, in his stubborn refusal to acknowledge that he'd predicted the impossible. The ecclesiarchy tried to declare him a living saint. He declined, citing that sainthood would interfere with his forecast schedule. The Inquisition quietly added his station to their monitoring network. Any unusual readings were to be reported immediately. Within a year, every major hive in the sector had recruited meteorologists trained in the Thane method. Treat everything as weather, no matter how impossible. The results were mixed. Most of them just predicted regular weather badly. But 3 times, they caught something. A meteorologist on Cram noticed his instruments acting sad and predicted severe metaphysical precipitation. The hive evacuated. A Nurgle plague that would have killed millions affected only empty buildings. A weather station on Vorlax reported aggressive high-pressure system with hostile intent.
citizens sheltered. A cornate berserker's rampage found no one to rampage against. A forecaster on Delphi 6 announced probability of temporal distortion with scattered chronological anomalies. People stayed home. A Zinchian plot to age the population into dust failed because everyone was in age-shielded bunkers, standard storm shelters that happened to have stasis fields for food preservation.
Deep within the Administratum, in a vault that required 17 forms to acknowledge existed, Project Mundane was born. If one meteorologist could accidentally predict warp storms, what could 1,000 do? They recruited the most boring people in the Immaterium: meteorologists, accountants, form processors, data clerks, the kind of people who got excited about spreadsheet formatting. They were given the most sophisticated detection equipment the Mechanicus could produce, arrays that could sense warp disturbances at the quantum level, cogitators that could process billions of data points per second. The recruits ignored all of it and used their old barometers. The training was simple. They were exposed to increasingly severe warp phenomena while being asked to predict weather. Daemons manifested. The meteorologists issued fog warnings. Reality broke. They predicted localized gravitational variations. The walls bled. They noted unusual humidity, possible pipe leak. The first fuel test, a chaos incursion on Hive Septimus. The cultists had everything: daemon engines, possessed warriors, dark apostles. The local meteorologist predicted severe weather 6 days in advance. The population evacuated. The cultists emerged to empty streets. The daemons manifested to no audience. The dark ritual fizzled from lack of terror to feed on. The chaos forces stood around confused for 3 hours before the Imperial Guard arrived and shot them. The Chaos Lord's last words were reported. How did they know? The guardsman who shot him shrugged. Weather forecast. By M41.999, 300 hives had mundane-trained meteorologists. Chaos incursions dropped by 37%, not from being defeated, from being predicted as weather events. The ruinous powers held a conclave. Metaphorically, they can't actually meet without trying to kill each other. The consensus was bewilderment. Khorne couldn't understand how blood forecasts worked. Nurgle was confused by plague warnings appearing in weather reports. Slaanesh was disturbed that excess was being measured in millibars. Tzeentch claimed to have planned it all along, but nobody believed him. And Virgil Thane? He remained at his station on Hive Primus, issuing forecasts 4 times daily, accuracy rate holding steady at 64%. He'd received 43 commendations, 17 medals, and 1 offer of nobility. He'd filed them all under atmospheric anomalies subcategory, irrelevant. He didn't know he'd changed the galaxy, didn't care that his name was whispered in the warp as the boring one. He didn't realize that daemons checked weather forecasts before manifesting. The official record states that Hive Primus was saved by the swift action of imperial authorities, the Emperor's divine protection, and the heroic sacrifice of the Crimson Sabers chapter, who arrived 6 days late. The truth is written in the Ledger of the Lost, filed under Victories, subcategory Atmospheric. The warp storm came to Hive Primus with the promise of 47 million souls. It left with nothing but the confused frustration of daemons who'd never been ignored so thoroughly. They'd prepared for heroes, for last stands, for desperate resistance, for faith and fury and the clash of gods and men. They had not prepared for Virgil Thane, a man who looked at the impossible and saw only a particularly interesting low-pressure system, a man whose superpower was not psychic might or divine blessing, but the simple inability to accept that his instruments could be wrong. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, where gods play with mortal souls, and reality itself is negotiable, sometimes the greatest defense isn't a fortress or a fleet or even faith. Sometimes it's a man with a barometer who refuses to accept that negative pressure is impossible. The Chaos Gods fear many things: the Emperor on his throne, the Necrons awakening, the Tyranids' hunger. But now they fear something else. They fear local weather reports. They fear evacuation procedures. They fear people who treat apocalypse like precipitation. They fear being classified as a meteorological event. The Emperor protects. Virgil Thane predicts. And in the grim darkness of the far future, sometimes the difference between damnation and salvation is a man too stubborn to admit his barometer might be broken. Current forecast for Hive Primus: partly cloudy, 40% chance of rain, 2% chance of reality breach. Bring umbrella. Have a blessed day.